Picture this. About a month ago, I was pretty much at an all-time high with my productivity. Work was super intense. Em and I were working really hard to get out a high-quality YouTube video every single week. We were eating really well, and on top of all of that, we were making plans to see all of our friends over the holidays, and I was hitting the gym super regularly as well. But then, suddenly, all of that came to a bit of a screeching halt. I began to feel tired and lethargic. I started to sleep in later and later each day. I would skip the gym and lay on the sofa watching YouTube videos. Work began to feel like a drag, and I felt like it was so much harder to get started with anything. It felt like me from the previous month was a different person entirely, and all the productivity, energy, and motivation that I had experienced had just completely evaporated. I found myself in a rut. So if you're anything like me and you've cycled between these periods of hyperproductivity and low energy where you feel like you're reversing all the progress you've made, then you know that being in a rut kinda sucks. I've spent quite a bit of time experimenting with science-backed ways to get myself out of these ruts and back into the nice productive swing of things. But to be honest, it's never easy and there's always some resistance, so I thought it'd be interesting to take you guys with me over the next 7 days as I get my productivity back through the ways that I know how. Over the next week, I'm going to focus on 3 main things in particular. Firstly, no more sleeping in. I'm going to get to bed at a similar time every single night, providing work allows, and get up at the same time every single morning. Secondly, I'm going to get a daily dose of movement or exercise every single day, including getting outside first thing in the morning for some sun exposure at least 5 out of the 7 days. And lastly, I'm going to put a straight up ban on checking Instagram until the evening. I would say social media generally, but to be honest, Instagram's the only one that I have trouble with, so that's the only one I'm going to carve out for the purposes of getting back on track. And we're getting started right away because it's Sunday evening right now and it's almost bedtime. We're going to have a bit of fun and camp outside in our living room on our super comfortable sofa bed, so we're going to make the bed now and get ready for sleep. Didn't get to bed too late last night, but it's always the first day trying to adjust the sleep schedule that's really hard. Took me a while to fall asleep last night. It's definitely easier to wake yourself up earlier than you're used to rather than try to fall asleep earlier than you're used to. If you've ever had jet lag and lay in bed completely awake, you'll know what I'm talking about. Not gonna lie, getting outside right now for a walk is kind of the last thing I want to do because it's really chilly and I'm really tired, but I'm committed, so let's make this happen. Alright, just got home. I brought coffee home as a little treat since I made it out on the first day. I'm just gonna add one little thing, which is to have a cold shower before I get started with work. It is really chilly today, but I feel like having a cold shower will really perk me up, so I'm gonna get in the shower and get to work. So you might have noticed that the things I'm trying to do this week are not overly complicated. It's not super hard to wake up on time or to get outside and get a bit of movement in, so it's not super clear how these things are going to help me get out of my rut. But there's actually a really good reason behind all of this. We often think that a lack of action means that we lack motivation. And that's because motivation can make really difficult things a lot more enjoyable to do, like we're fired up to take action. And that's why we think we need motivation. If the difficult thing were easier to do or even enjoyable to do, surely we would do it and continue to do it. But the truth is, motivation is temporary and it doesn't account for the entire equation. Motivation can certainly get us started with something, but it usually doesn't last until a habit actually sticks. And that's where the next part of the equation comes in: momentum. You see, while motivation gets us to start doing the thing that we want to do, momentum is what carries us to keep doing the thing. Exercise is a really good example of this. If you don't already have a really good workout routine, it can be really painful to get yourself up and go into the gym. When motivation strikes, it certainly makes it a lot easier to get up and go to the gym. But sometimes we can ride that motivation a bit too hard and lose steam before we've actually created a sustainable habit of getting to the gym. If we want to ride that motivation into creating momentum, we need to set up small victories for ourselves where we feel like we've succeeded. If you succeed at what you set out to do one day, however small of a task that may be, you'll experience that small positive hit of dopamine, which encourages you to do more things. That in turn creates momentum for us to seek out and succeed at other things. So, to my original point, Even though my actual intention is to get back to my optimal habit routine and productivity cycle, I set relatively small goals for myself because I wanted to set myself up for success. In turn, I know that I can use the momentum from those small wins to help build me towards where I want to be. By setting the goalpost a bit lower, we create a situation where we can build momentum and use that initial motivation to our advantage, as opposed to setting the goalpost a bit too high and actually burning out by the time that motivation runs out. Okay, so the Instagram thing's a bit tricky because I kind of find myself mindlessly drifting my finger over to where the icon is. I managed to catch myself just now before I clicked in, but to make things easier, I'm gonna go ahead and move the icon onto a separate page so that I know not to click into it. Hopefully this will make it easier to stick to the Instagram ban for the rest of the day. Okay, so we're at the end of day one, and it's currently 10:40. And I gotta say, for the last few hours, I really didn't think about checking Instagram at all. But honestly, the number of times I picked up my phone today and just scrolled to where the app icon used to be and tried pressing was shocking. It really drew some attention to how often I'm mindlessly checking Instagram, so I think this was definitely a good exercise. The only reason I didn't do an outright ban on it was because I do talk to some of my friends on there, so I'm gonna respond to them real quick and take it easy for a bit, and then get a nice early sleep so I can come back and hit it again for day 2. So, day 2 is going really well. I feel pretty good, and I genuinely do feel good about myself for sticking to the things that I said that I would do. It's definitely been a little bit of a struggle because it's still pretty chilly in Hong Kong, and because we don't have indoor heating here, it can be pretty tough to get up in the morning. I've also been eating a little bit worse as part of the whole being in a rut thing and all. So given how good I'm feeling about everything right now, I'm gonna make myself my favorite power lunch of eggs, bacon, and a glass of athletic greens. I always feel amazing after a lunch like this, super clear-headed and ready to tackle my work. So I'm gonna eat, get back to it, and try to capture as much productivity as I can during the day so I can finish my work nice and early. I had a relatively productive rest of the day and got my work done early enough to enjoy the evening. Since my urge to open Instagram wasn't that bad today, I'm just gonna keep the app closed and respond to all my messages tomorrow. So I made myself a cup of herbal tea and read some comic books to unwind. Another day in the books. So let's talk about the whole Instagram thing and why I'm choosing to restrict that until 10 p.m. So as part of my rut, I've just been feeling really unmotivated, sluggish, and not all that productive. It's just been feeling way harder for me to get started with doing anything that I know I need to do, like even filming this video. I kept trying to push it back and saying, I'll get started on tomorrow or the day after or next week. And the big red flag for me in relation to Instagram was that I would always mindlessly just pick up my phone and scroll to Instagram and scroll through my feed. This is why I had to move the icon onto its own separate page, because only then would I catch myself in the mindless act of just going to the app and opening it. Scrolling through social media can be a highly dopaminergic activity and can have a really big impact on our brain and the way we think and feel. But don't just take my word for it. This is Anna Lemke, a psychiatrist who is chief of the Stanford Addiction Medicine Dual Diagnosis Clinic at Stanford University.
The first message I would want to get across about social media is that it really is a drug, and it's engineered to be a drug, which doesn't mean that we can't use it, but we need to be very thoughtful about the way we use it, just like we need to be thoughtful about the way we use any drug. And so that means with intention and in advance, planning our use. The first thing that we need to do is to cut out all of these feel-good substances and behaviors, at least for long enough for those neuroadaptation gremlins to hop off and for homeostasis to be restored.
Dopamine fasting.
Yeah, essentially dopamine fasting, right? And whatever your source of dopamine is, to cut it out for long enough. Now, in my clinical experience, in my practice, because I have patients who come in seeking help for anxiety, depression, insomnia, and the first thing that I will typically do is to have them cut out their feel-good drugs and behaviors.
In a sense, what Anna advocates for is kind of the same as all those YouTube videos you see on dopamine detoxes. The idea that for a period of time, we remove all highly dopaminergic activity from our lives. While I do think there's some merit to doing a full-blown dopamine detox, I chose to limit Instagram only for a couple of reasons. Firstly, as with the other things I'm doing to get out of this rut, I believe in a more moderate approach to lifestyle intervention if you actually want those things to stick. I've tried full-blown dopamine detoxes before where I cut out sugar, alcohol, and all social media, but while those are really effective and interesting to do from time to time, they're not really sustainable. And the goal for me with this whole exercise is sustainability. And secondly, I feel that by doing specific things to address an issue that I'm having, I kind of naturally gravitate towards doing more similar things as well. A good example of this is how I felt yesterday with my eating. Since I'm feeling mentally less cluttered from not checking Instagram all the time, and since I've been getting up early and getting outside to get some movement, I kind of just want to keep the ball rolling and do more things that make me feel really good. At the end of the day, the whole point of getting out of a rut is just for me to cut out all of the distractions, feel a lot better about myself, and be able to do the things that I know I need to do. And that all starts with going after the low-hanging fruit and cutting out the things that I know are impacting me the most. I felt really good after getting outside, so this morning I decided to continue at home with a quick workout. And then our favorite part of the day, coffee time. So, it's day 5 today, and I definitely am feeling a lot better. It definitely feels like I'm making progress on the things that I really need to in my life. And to be honest, it probably really helps that I'm filming this as well because it keeps me accountable to the whole process, and I do feel like I'm putting in time and effort to making content for our YouTube channel, which is something that I really want to be doing. But, and this is a big but, as I mentioned in the beginning of this video, I do find myself cycling between these hyperproductive periods and these ruts. So the question is, how do I find myself getting into these ruts in the first place, and can they be avoided? The short answer is that being conscious of this cycle and fluctuating between productivity and being in a rut does make the process a lot easier to manage. If I catch myself falling into a rut before I get too deep, then it's a lot easier to get myself out of it too. At the same time, sometimes having that feeling like I'm moving towards the direction of getting myself into a rut is kind of a signal for me internally that I might be pushing myself too hard. So having that awareness and being able to pull myself back a little bit when I think I'm going a little bit too hard also helps me avoid a situation where I get really deep into a rut. So these days, if I'm feeling a bit less energetic or wanting to play more video games or just generally feeling like my work is a lot harder to do, I kind of have the awareness to pull back a little bit and give myself a little bit of a break before it gets out of hand. I conceptualize a lot of these behaviors by thinking about them as habits. Bad habits are kind of like good habits in the sense that it takes some repetition for a bad habit before it really becomes habitual and becomes a lot harder to change. What might feel one day like, oh, just one more YouTube video before bed, quickly turns into an hour or two long YouTube marathon in the dark with light off and your screen blasting your eyes into oblivion with blue light. Sound familiar? James Clear talks about this in Atomic Habits, a book that we've talked about on this channel before. Just like getting outside in the morning for a few minutes doesn't feel like that big of a deal, watching one YouTube video before you go to sleep doesn't seem like that big of a deal either. But these small 1% changes in either direction can really compound against themselves if we keep getting 1% better or 1% worse at our habits each and every day. And if we keep letting our good habits wane by about 1% every single day and letting our bad habits get stronger by 1% every single day, then even within just 2 weeks, the power of compounding means that there's quite a big difference. One video before bed turns into 2 videos turns into 4, you get the picture. The sooner we identify that we're slipping, the quicker we're able to reverse the whole thing. And again, like anything else, this comes through repetition and awareness. Over time, we start to develop an awareness for when we're pushing ourselves a little bit too hard and need to dial back a little bit. And over time, we learn to make small adjustments too, because we don't want to create such crazy barriers to entry that it becomes so impossible to really make habits stick. And this is a really important thing. The reason that I preach sustainability when it comes to changing lifestyle or changing habits is really because I find that I get really negative feelings about my own behavior and how I'm performing when I start to find myself in these ruts. So by addressing the situation with micro adjustments, when I start to feel myself slipping into a rut, or when I feel like I'm pushing myself a little bit too hard, helps me avoid such a severe difference between my productive periods and my not so productive periods. Right now, for instance, I'm feeling really fired up, really good about everything, and I just want to do a lot of stuff today. But I'm going to take the win with my workout and not push it too much with what I want to do today, because I kind of know that if I go too hard, I might burn out my momentum and end up just sort of not really being able to sustain myself. So, like yesterday, I'm going to get to work, try to get everything done in time, and try to call it a day nice and early so I can hit it again tomorrow. Okay, so we're at the final day, and I'm pleased to report that I stuck to my little challenge every single day this week. I definitely feel like I'm back in the swing of things. I'm feeling less distracted, I'm being more productive, and I kind of have more free time as a result of just being more productive when I'm working. But now the big question, am I going to continue doing all this stuff? I think the whole thing about waking up and getting outside first thing has been really good for me because when I work from home, sometimes I can be a little bit sedentary aside from the time that I'm working out. Going outside and getting that little bit of movement first thing in the morning really perks me up and is kind of a nice start to the day, so I'll probably keep that one up. But regarding Instagram, I'll probably get rid of the outright ban because I do use that platform to chat to a bunch of my friends, and I do like to share little parts of my life on there as well. Even though I set the ban to 10 p.m., I kind of ended up not really using Instagram much at all over the last week, which has been really good in terms of resetting my productivity, but I do want to be able to connect with people on that platform. So instead, what I'm going to do is use the iPhone's built-in function to set a time limit of 1 hour per day on Instagram. Emily does this with her Instagram, and she said it really helped her stop mindlessly scrolling, so I'm going to give it a try as well. Thanks a lot for checking out this video and for coming along on this journey. If you want to see more, I'll link up above to a video we made on our morning routines back when Em was still working as a lawyer, and check out this video for a video that the YouTube algorithm thinks that you'll like.